You didn't say.
Hello and welcome to Focus on Fantasy Romance, episode number 28, a podcast where we discuss books, the genre, industry, and our geeky lives. I'm your host, Elle Klaus.
I'm Amy DeClerc, A.R. DeClerc.
And I'm Paulina Woods.
And today we have an interview with author Haven Cage. Did I say that right? Haven, you guys, you rushed me. I don't even have her Amazon page pulled up. You're like, start the podcast. Hang on a second. And don't mind my screaming children behind me. I'm going to read her bio from Amazon. Haven Cage lives in the Carolinas with her husband and son. After many years of dabbling with drawing, painting, and working night shift in the medical field, she decided to try her hand at writing. Unfortunately, her love for books came later in life and proved to add a healthy challenge during her writing journey. Determined to hone her craft, though, she soaks up as much information as she can, spends her free time tapping away in her favorite local coffee shop, and keeps a good book in hand whenever possible. What began as a hobby has grown into a way of escape and the yearning to take her journey farther, her love for writing and reading deepening along the way. So welcome, Haven.
Thank you.
I lost my video box. There you are. So your first book is called Falter.
Right.
What inspired your first novel? Tell us a little bit about Falter.
Falter is a dark urban fantasy. I actually started it on a whim as something to do while my kid was in preschool and just kind of as a hobby. And it took me 7 years to write it and get it like completed. So during the last 2 years or so, I finally decided I can't self-edit, and I hired an editor, and that was when I got pretty serious about actually publishing versus just writing. But it's about a young woman who grows up on the streets with a man named George, who just basically raises her as her father figure. And they get a job at a cafe, and she starts to have some feelings for the cafe owner. And then George gets ill, and she sees a demon take his soul. So the rest of the book is kind of her developing with this new world that she's been introduced to, and her feelings that are developing for the cafe owner who is involved in this world, as well as her archangel and some issues she's had with him. So
I keep getting these pop-ups that are blocking what I'm trying to do. What did you do to prepare for writing a novel or a series of novels?
There wasn't a lot of research work. The main research that I did was actually on angel hierarchy, but that was pretty brief. When I write, I base a lot of it on character driven. So it's a lot of emotion and a lot of, the plot line versus, setting and research-based material. So there wasn't a whole lot of preparing as far as the actual writing part. Now trying to get the self-publishing part down, that's all been kind of a go as much as I can.
Self-publishing isn't self-explanatory, so I totally understand that. What were some of the expectations you had about being an author that didn't turn out to be true?
The amount of work that goes into it was very surprising. You think you got one thing down and you're going to get it done, and it takes like 4 times as long to do. Also, the ease of getting in to the door and getting exposure is really, it's been difficult. Things really surprised me with how difficult they've been.
So I have a little bit of a follow-up. You said that you always have a book in hand. What are you currently reading?
Right now, I've got about 3 books I'm reading. I actually also listen to audiobooks. I listen to audiobooks more than I read just because I can do it faster. And that way I'm still reading and, trying to expose myself. But right now, I'm actually beta reading for Renee Mason. Also listening to Megan March right now, The Dirty Billionaire. And I have a Risa Blakely novel, her Shattered Lives series, Shattered Lives book. I'm also probably about halfway into as well, but I kind of pick up a little bit here and a little there, and then listen to as much as I can along the way.
Okay, and you said the bio said you do a lot of writing at a coffee shop. Do you have a favorite beverage?
I drink white chocolate mochas. Yeah, those are usually my favorite, or peppermint mochas.
I like
big tea
mochas.
lover.
Mm-hmm.
Peppermint mochas are mine. They're good.
Yeah, they're very good. That was my questions, Amy.
So my first question is kind of existential, but what does being an author mean to you?
It means being serious to me. I mean, I feel like in order to be an author, you have to really put forth the work and you have to be diligent about it. Though I'm a huge procrastinator, but I think if you really want to be an author, you're gonna have to hunker down and put. Otherwise, it's going to be one long, drag out journey, and you're not going to get anywhere with it. So I think to be an author, you have to be really diligent about your writing. You have to be self-supportive. You have to be supportive of other people because networking is a huge part of it. Just believe in what you do and just keep learning along the way.
So where do you shelve your novels? Let's say we're going to go into a library and look for you. Where would we find you? Are you YA romance? Are you fantasy, paranormal?
Yeah, I would be more under the paranormal, supernatural fantasy. Technically, urban fantasy is the subgenre. So, yeah, and it's definitely adult. I tend to write a little bit darker. I have a potty mouth.
Is there a theme or a common message in the stories that you'd like to convey to the reader? Something that you want to tell people about yourself, about your characters, about your book in general that comes through from the story, do you think?
Yeah, Falter. I started the Falter and Soul series based on a lot of the doubt and religious background that I have, and not so much doubt in God or anything like that, but just, our doubt in ourselves spiritually. And I grew up Catholic, so that kind of crosses over a lot. But as far as I'm told, and my purpose was to not give it religious boundaries or anything like that and not be preachy about it. Which, most people say that I've attained that, but the purpose of it to me was to get those feelings out and the struggle of dealing with good and bad in our everyday lives and within ourselves and trying to overcome that on a very personal, individual level. So it's more about our internal journey and struggle than it is the heaven and hell war as a whole that you normally see.
Tell us 3 things that every reader who's new to your books needs to know about you or about the books in general. Like 3 important things that you want them to know.
I don't sugarcoat anything. So if I have something emotional in my story, I'm gonna put my emotion into it and try, even if it's dark or disturbing. I'm very gritty about it, and I don't do happy endings very well. I have not written the 3rd book in the Falter and Soul series yet, but I have a happier ending to that one. But with the first 2 books, I made it very clear that it is a struggle and kind of left it on that. So the last book will hopefully develop in a much nicer place. But yeah, that's been a big thing that people want to make sure they let me know straight up front.
You're killing me. You're killing me.
I'm sorry. I know. I know.
Never after person. I need my soul happy place at the end of books. But I know it's not always possible, and I know it doesn't always fit the story. So, I mean, from an author standpoint, I get you. From a reader standpoint, knife to the heart. Can't do it.
I understand.
Everybody's different, though. Everybody's different. Okay, so I'm going to ask you one of Isabel's questions. She unfortunately wasn't able to join us tonight, but her question was, how do you deal with rejection and or criticism regarding your writing?
Luckily, I have not. I mean, I said I tried to do the traditional publishing, first for about a year. I tried to do that, and so I approached authors. And there was a lot of, obviously, rejection from that because I decided to go, self-publish after that. But I didn't take it to heart. I know that it's a very, subjective matter when it comes to trying to fit into the market and fit into somebody's, list of what they want. And I understand that. And I know that everybody's different. Everybody has their own opinions. And again, like with you, this book kind of goes against your grain because of the manner how I wrote it. And I just take that as kind of a learning, platform. And as far as, the last train of thought. As far as like reviews and things, I've been lucky not to have any really bad reviews yet. So I haven't really had to deal with that quite yet. There has been criticism as far as, helpful criticism. And I think that any criticism is helpful along an author's journey. So I welcome it.
So we're talking about the market. When you sat down to write the story, were you planning to write your book for a specific market, or were you planning to write your book for the story itself? I mean, authors all have different, goals and minds, and some authors do say, I'm going to write a book that in this popular genre, in this popular, market space. Are you that kind of author, or do you write what you want to write and hope it fits into the market later, or kind of in between?
Yeah, Faltering Souls was written more as I wrote it because I wanted to write it. And I'm glad that I did that. I think that I am struggling because I did that. I think it is harder to get the exposure because it is an oversaturated market, and I understand that. One day I'll kind of get my way up the rank ladder so that people can see me a little bit better and see that, there are some differences into fantasy and that you can kind of break it down. But yeah, I kind of write for myself first. Now I'm working on something right now that I initially was going to do fantasy, and I switched it because of the market. So I have to say I'm kind of doing both at this point. Okay. I had no intention of actually publishing Falter. It just kind of started, and then it took hold, and I said I put too much work into it, and this is what I want to do. This is me. So with it after that, but yeah, I didn't have any market analysis or anything like that in mind when I wrote it.
Good. Okay, P, I'm going to let you pick up with your questions.
Woohoo! Well, my first question is going to be Ish's second question. You kind of answered this question, but do you shy away from controversial material in your work, or do you just take it head on? So I know you write more like religious type.
Right. And I think I'm open-minded enough that luckily I wasn't really raised inside of a religious box. I mean, I came up with an upbringing and a religious kind of steering, but very much outside of the box, and that kind of helped me, say, look, I can have this, but I can also be open-minded about what's out there aside from it as well. So I anything that I write that has to do with that, I try to be mindful of other people who might read it, and try to make it to where it's not offensive, or it doesn't narrow, the aspects down too much. But I also, write what's true to me as well, and, base it on how I feel and my emotions as much as I can.
Okay, so you said you started reading later in life. What brought about that change? 'Cause I talk to a lot of people who I work with, and they just won't read. And I've been reading since I was, I don't know, 3 or 4. So I'm just wondering, what brought about that change for you?
So all through high school and like elementary, I can be honest and say I never read a whole book the entire way through, which is terrible. It's awful. But I had a lady, and y'all are gonna laugh at me, but I had a lady give me Twilight as my first book, like whole book, for like a birthday present or something. And I said, I'm gonna sit down and read it because I loved the cover of it. It was simple and it was different at the time. So I sat down and read it, and I just kept going, and then it kind of evolved from there. I started figuring out what I liked and what I didn't like. And I think when I was in school and younger, I didn't have that discipline or that knowledge to know that there are so many different things that can appeal to people out there. It's just, you've got to find it. So I just didn't understand that at the time because my family, my mom worked 2 jobs, and, I didn't have somebody to show me that you need to take time to do this and that you can do this. So
I'm laughing because I'm like, I was lucky. My mom our babysitter was a library. So I'm like, we literally, we go back to visit, and my librarian literally goes, "Oh yeah, hi Woods." We're like, yeah.
Yeah, my mother read constantly, and then we'd go to the library, and like when I graduated high school, I had checked out 11,000 books on my library card.
wow.
And because we spent and then we had the bookmobile, which there's no such thing hardly in the Midwest, but we had the bookmobile that came too in the summers when we were out of school. So I was lucky also that my parents always encouraged reading, and I was so it was all right, but
we were more art based. So I did a lot of drawing and things like that with my spare time versus reading. I think that was just something, I don't know. It was just something at the time that we focused on more. My mom used to read a lot when she was younger, but it just never, she got busier, she got older. She didn't take the time, and I just didn't know what it was all about. So
I think creativity is kind of important. I always tell people, when I ask them, I'm like, well, what do? You have a business and you have a passion. Like my older brother, he's an electrician, but he's also a songwriter and singer. My little sister, well, she's just crazy, but she's also a designer. She can literally walk into a store, look at a dress, walk away, and make it. She makes her own clothing. We all have a passion, but we also have a creativity part of us. So With that being said, I know that, like with the reading, I'm going to veer away from my second question because I was going to ask, how important is reading to authors, but how important is creativity? Like, it doesn't have to just be reading. Do you think that having that creative ability helps with writing?
Absolutely. And I think that as adults, we lose that. I think that was one of the harder parts of me actually sitting down and writing Falter was, especially being that it was a fantasy, to kind of break the confines of adult imagination that, most people build as they get older. To not have to think of something in a certain manner and that anything could happen. It was really hard to actually understand and kind of wrap your head around that when you're so used to living to certain rules during the day.
How about jump starting? Because I had to re-jump start my imagination. I used to always hear voices and stuff growing up. Then I went to college and they left. Was that a hard part for you? Was starting to hear your characters at all? Or do you have that? Like, do you hear your characters speaking?
I think to a certain extent I do. I kind of start them and kind of think about how I want them to develop it from like their basis. and then they start to kind of take on their own form after that. So, you know, with Nevaeh, I wanted her to be troubled. I knew that I wanted her to be kind of alone in some regards, and very guarded, and very stubborn, because a lot of times that's what I am. So, you know, I wanted something I could relate to, and something that was me instilled in her. But then, you know, the further on that I got into writing, and the further I took the story, the more she kind of took on her own personality and traits.
So did she surprise you at all? Like what character actually surprised me? Like, whoa, what are you doing? Or do you pretty much outline it?
She didn't surprise me, but kind of how Gavin, the cafe owner that I talked about, his turn, especially in the second book, has really probably been the biggest change out of all my characters. And it kind of was a little jarring compared to what I started with.
And that happens. One of mine turns out to be gay, and he was like trying to pair me with a woman. And I was like, fine, whatever, dude. Like, I could not write his story for the world. And finally, he was like, you know what? Screw you, woman. I don't like women. I'm like, oh, okay. His story flowed, and I was pissed off. I was like, damn it. Had to add an extra book.
Yeah, sometimes it takes those little traits to just start, you know, moving the story along.
Yeah, but don't they know that we created them? Like, that's no point. I created you. You do what I want.
Nah.
Yeah, I know. Amy, what's your comment before I do my question?
Yeah, it's fine. I was just going to say, on the topic of imagination, I think that our generation, which I think that all four of us here are pretty much around the same age, at least within a decade of one another, we're all on the cusp of that group that grew up where once you hit a certain age, it was you have to leave behind your childhood, and you have to forget imagination, and you have to think about owning a house and buying a car and having a family and defense. And the millennial age, which is probably, you know, the next decade that was born after us, they are much freer to explore their imagination, be weird. I actually have found that as I have gotten older and society has kind of let go on a lot of those expectations, my imagination is much more fertile, because, you know, I can listen to the music I want to listen to, I can wear the clothes I want to wear, I can watch the TV shows I want to watch, and read the books I want to read, and I don't feel like society has all these expectations that I have to, you know, stay at home, cook a meal, run a vacuum cleaner, you know, all those things that it expected of people who are probably 10 years older than us, and then maybe trickling down an entire generation, and then much less, you know, as time goes through. So I think we're looking at a big shift for authors coming up. You're going to see a lot of more out of the box thinking.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I mean? Because they don't have those stifling, we're trying to open people's minds, make them creative, and all these things we're doing for our children and the next generations and all those things. And I think that's going to change things a lot. And it's changed for me because, and I know Paulina and Elle, you know, we don't necessarily always write what's expected in a story. It's we try to be as creative and be as different as we can, because I think that the readers that are coming, and, you know, there's a giant mass of them, they're looking for that. So I think we're on the right track as far as not always writing to market, because we do have that large group of people with very creative minds who are going to be our massive audience at some point when they hit our book.
I think you also have a generation of people our age that are not giving as many fucks.
Yeah, I agree. I don't. I mean, I don't compared to my parents.
Well, they've been told,
you know what I mean? Like,
this is the mold you need to fit into, and I'm like, I'm getting older, and I don't care what people think of me. I don't care if they don't like the way that I dress. I don't care if they don't like the way that I write or that I'm writing. Because if I would have tried to do this if I would have tried to be an author in my 20s, I would have chickened out. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's exactly what happens. Like, because I've wanted to be a writer since I was in high school, but like I chickened out, and I got a job, and I went to college, and I got married, and I had kids and house. you know, I did what I was supposed to do, and I'm not fulfilled. I mean, I love my kids and my family, but it's not the fulfillment I wanted. So now I'm don't give a fuck, and I'm doing what I want.
Exactly. I think too that we're gonna, I think that the older we get, the less what everybody else thinks matters. And so, yeah, it's important and you want to reach your audience, but I think we're looking for more like self-fulfillment than making everybody else in the world happy. And I think the younger generation has that already. They don't have to wait till they get to 35 or 40 to say, you know what, I don't.
We paved the road.
Yeah, we're paving the road for, if you want to wear your muumuu to Walmart, you wear your muumuu to Walmart. Like, you can do as you please. And
no muumuus to Walmart. Sorry.
I don't wear muumuu to Walmart, but I probably care too much about what other people think. But I'm just saying, I think that that's going to change the face of publishing, and that's going to change the face of reading, because the more authors like us who have less fucks to give and write outside of the box, we're going to appeal to that audience that never gave a fuck to start with. So I think we're on the cusp of being, it's not going to be so much Hemingway, and it's not, because I look at J.K. Rowling like she was a force to be reckoned with, because she wrote what appealed to her at the time and was rejected like 50 times and became a massive popular, icon. So I don't know. I think that we're right on the edge of that group in society that doesn't care as much anymore about what's normal. Okay, P, you had more questions, I think, right? Sorry, I got us off track, but that just popped into my head.
Sorry, I started texting. Okay. Anyway, so I have a last question, and then I have kind of something else I want to ask. But anyways, why did you choose new adult or young adult? New adult, young adult. Those two kind of run together.
It's new adult. So the reason I kind of paired it in with that is because I also wanted to appeal to the younger, not young adults, you know what I'm saying, like the 20s and 30s somethings, because I think when I looked at the genres and the age aspects of it, it did seem to kind of fit into the new adults, because it is a life-changing event and like a turnaround in her life, and a development that she goes through during the series. So that's kind of why I overlapped into that a little bit, but it's clearly adult aspect of it as well. Young adult, I mean, when I think of young adult, and from what I've read, it's more teenage based, or just barely into college, but with less kink and language. So yeah,
kink and language, nice.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, I'm one of those people, I know it sounds so weird, is I steer away from young adult. I'll read new adult, but I steer away from young adult because I have no connection. Like, even movies, right. I'm looking at it going, the world is saved by a 12-year-old whose parents shouldn't have the courage to do what she's doing. I'm bored. So,
yeah, I was kind of put in an adult aspect very young in my life, so I don't have that child mindset. And so I just don't think that I would be a good writer or, advocate for young adults. And stuff is, you can get away with so much more.
As an adult, yes, you can. And I like reading about sex. I like writing about it sometimes. And I think that's what I kind of tend to go towards. I'm like, young adult, I'm sorry, I don't want to hear about an 18-year-old or a 16-year-old feeling that this is a person for the rest of their life. I'm 30. I was 30. Wait, no, I was 27 when I found my forever. You know what I mean? So to me, I'm like, you can be 16 and find your forever, but not everyone does. Right. And so that's kind of my thing. I'm like, I really don't want to read about a 16-year-old dating. I'm weird. So I was just wondering, like, how did you differentiate? How did you decide to write new adult instead of young adult? But good choice. I'll read it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I was thinking, since I think we're done with our really jiggity parts. Okay, since we're background on that, old people romance came up in a discussion once, like 60s to 70s. It was interesting-ish. Disgusting. I want to think about my grandparents doing it. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5 like or either ors. Okay, just answer without really thinking. They're really easy, but they're fun. I love these things. Okay.
Like
So
rapid fire?
cat or dog?
Cat.
Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Sports or music?
Music.
Books or movies?
Oh. Oh. More gratification in books, yes. But I love some good movies too. I'm a visual person. I can't help it.
I don't blame you. And sun or rain?
Rain.
Me too. Sun
Yeah,
is just
I love
so
a rainy day.
overrated.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that was one of the things with Alter is, I really like exploring the dark side of things, the rainy side, the what ifs if nothing went right. So
What is your favorite thing to do on a rainy day?
Right. I like to write on a rainy day and sleep. I'm a night shift worker, so anytime I can sleep in a good rainy day, I'm all for it.
I get that. I get off I'm 3 to 11, and I used to be 11 to 7. And yeah. Rainy days are like you're like, oh my god, it's raining. I can sleep all day.
Yes.
Totally understand that one. Elle, you have anything?
Nope.
Don't just shake your head at me.
I can do what I want.
Well, you want to close it out?
Yeah, why don't you tell us where we can find you, like your website or favorite social media links?
I am on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all under either Haven Cage or Author Haven Cage. And my web address is www.authorhavencage.com. So you can find me there. I'm listed under Goodreads. I'm on BookBub. I'm on Amazon, Smashwords, Barnes & Noble. And most of the smaller distribution under Smashwords. So I'm all over the place. You can Google me. I've got a ton of interviews and stuff you can look at. Yeah. There as much as I can.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. If you like the podcast, please like, comment, and share. This has been episode number 28. Good night.
Peace.
Peace.